teacher and poet. He is a World Poetry Slam champion, and in his journeys, he has shared a stage with Alicia Keys, Maya Angelou, and many other talented artists and poets. But tonight, he's here with us. So please, welcome to the stage, Joaquin.
How you guys doing tonight? When the ancients used to do this centuries ago, they would start with a poem called an invocation to the muse. That's a poem where you call the spirit that's already gone on to the next plane to come back and join us in this room and breathe inspiration into us, carry us through this night together. So I'll start with an invocation to the muse. My first muse, my last muse, my every muse, because you see, when my father would not, and my mother could not raise me where there was me at birth. My grandfather took me in and taught me everything I know about life, love, poetry, what it is to be a good man. So this one's for him. This is called Abuela's Garden. Bendito, bendito, bendito sea Dios. Los ángeles cantan y alaban a Dios. Memories of my grandfather's garden come back to me differently than other child of the hood memories. Memories of my grandfather's garden come back to me with aromas, with tastes, with corridos sung to the sun and novena sung to the moon, thinking both sides of life, the light and the dark, for their bountiful harvest. Ay, Dios mío. All those nights we knelt together in brown earth was always about harmony, about balance. Keyed and toned deeply, thanking the life-giving soul for its gifts. I follow suit, carefully clean up cilantro, manzanilla, yellow manso, always making sure metal spade never touches fragile roots, sweets, ancient abuelito. How could I be anything but a poet after those moments we shared? Don't you see? In my grandfather's garden, chiles grew. In my grandfather's garden, children grew. In my grandfather's garden, poems rose from the earth with their twisted arms of La Llorona, desperately reaching out for her missing children. In my grandfather's garden, all of these things would rise slowly because beautiful things take time to bloom. In my grandfather's garden, all of these things would rise slowly like well-watered voices, like deep chest hymns that begin as a girl, deep in the belly, and rise to the throat, slowly singing. Always singing, bendito, bendito, bendito sea Dios. Los ángeles cantan y alaban a Dios. Los ángeles cantan y alaban a Dios. That's the first one. The invocation to the muse is done. The show is ready to begin. This is the start of the show. Welcome to the show. And I promise you, this is not going to be one of those poetry readings. You sit in your lit crit class or whatever, and they bring in one of these guys. He's got gray hair and he's reading from his book very softly because he wants you to experience the catharsis for yourself. No. Hell to the no, there'll be none of that tonight. You hear something that makes you feel like laughing, well, damn it, laugh. You hear something that makes you feel like crying, you cry. If you hear something that makes you say inside your head, I heard that. Feel free after the poem. And the poems let me know you heard that. From the Lower East Side of Dallas, Texas, Barrio La Barrio East Side. I guess this is what a poem from the East Side, Lower East Side sounds like. This is called Street Poet. I am a street poet, and I write about bad things. I believe in the righteousness of the asphalt and the spiritual cleansing brought forth with savage drive-by. You will not hear highbrow poetic structure over here. I do not prescribe to, nor do I care in the least about iambic pentameter. I laugh at the alphabetical order of the Shakespearean son. Sistina, she. That's a little Latina I used to date. I write what I feel, and I spit what I know. I am the rose flesh bloom in the midst of body confusion. I am body wings personified. I am a street poet. You know, an action word that sits on its ass. I be the lazy verb. Oh, but the critics. The critics write you off as another one. You thought about the local term poet when you use the word chingada over and over again. Chingada over and over again. Chingada over and over again in your poem, not realizing that I am a street poet. And mama, I just talk this way. Sugar, I just walk this way. While other poets stand on street corners slinging amethyst rocks, I hold twin ink-filled blocks. Pop, pop, 2 shots to the night cry. Libre! Don't let my people go. Let my people flow from the esophagus. Greasy and wet, lips blink, sweat begin this not blurry brown boy by your blues. I am a street poet. A sort of god of this. I turn Puritan things back, like mixing Spanglish with prophetic feces. Yo soy the shit. Ain't it funky now? I am a street poet, and I write about bad things. How you feeling tonight? Joaquin, Zihuatanejo, I come all the way from Dallas, Texas to be with you here today. Thank you for having me. University of Florida, thank you so very much. My first name is Joaquin, my last name is Zihuatanejo. By random whoop whoops, make some whoop whoops if you've ever heard of a man named Joaquin. A couple of you, very good. No, now the rest of you will, so here goes. This is a suit. A specific act of litigation representing we, the Chicago nation, we, La Raza, we, the descendants of Joaquin Murrieta, and we bring this suit in his name. We bring this suit in the name of all unjust laws written in the blood of the innocent treaty Hidalgo, Gadsden purchased, foreign miners law of 1851. These acts were not committed in the name of my people, but in the name of greed, in the name of tyranny, in the name of manifest destiny, which is only in the name of theft and nothing else. We bring this suit in the name of Joaquin Murrieta, who resisted, Joaquin Murrieta, who rebelled, Joaquin Murrieta, who fought injustice. These are the acts of heroes and legends, but there's not one statue erected in his honor in this, his country. In 1851, when the American Western movement was sweeping over this land like a bad wave engulfing all, one Sonoran miner resisted, a man named Joaquin Murrieta. The Americans burned his house down, stole his gold mine, murdered his children, raped and murdered his wife in front of him, beat him with whips, and then let him live to tell of what would happen to those that resisted. Joaquin Murrieta called away that they got a gun and a horse and became the leader of a band of revolutionaries who raided American settlements from California to Nuevo Mexico, stealing money, food, clothing, all he could because he figured they owed him, which they did. He gave all that he stole to the struggling campesinos of the region. They called him the Robin Hood of El Dorado. But the Americans called him El Bandito Terrible. For 7 years he rode in the name of family, in the name of freedom, in the name of all that is right. If you knew his last name, the campesinos hid him in danger, became a myth, a legend, a ghost. Americans love to play the odds. So they rounded up all men in the region whose first name was Joaquin, and they slaughtered them. Countless men died, hands tied to firing posts, lips sealed as bullets pierced flesh, refusing to say they were not Joaquin. The Spanish word for this is unidad, unity. Eventually, a lynch mob called Joaquin near Stockton, shot him in the back like the cowards they were. Though he was shot dead, they hung his body from a tree for 2 days as a sign of victory. So I guess it's not just the brothers and sisters in this room who should be pissed off by the fact that we still have a town in Texas named Lynchburg. They decapitated the corpse and impaled the head and torso on 2 wooden stakes for all to see. Hidden by the cloak of darkness, the campesinos climbed up and pulled down the head of Joaquin, took it to a secret place for proper burial. To this day, no one knows for certain exactly where he's buried. Don't you see? This is why it is sacred. Not because it is my name, but because it was his. Mi abuelo, my grandfather, named me Joaquin as a reminder that there are things in this life worth living for, that there are things in this life worth fighting for, that there are things in this life worth dying for. This is a suit. A specific act of litigation representing we, the Chicano nation, we, La Raza, we, the descendants of Joaquin Oyenda, and we bring this suit in his name. I travel all over the country, universities and colleges, and I get asked a lot, what is your answer to the immigration issue facing the United States today? And my answer to that question is this: I don't know what the answer is. I just know what the answer is not. People who look a lot like you and me and my brother, mothers, grandmothers, children, should not die trying to come into a country that is, after all, a nation of immigrants. I wrote this morning because I was reading a short article over my wife's shoulder one morning when she was reading the paper. It was 4 sentences about these 19 people who died trying to come into this country. And it was 4 sentences, and no names, nothing. So I did some research, and I couldn't let their lives be reduced to 4 sentences. Page 17 of the Dallas Morning News. So I wrote this for them. This is called 19 Mexicans, and it's my take on the immigration issue facing us. Once, while walking with Jesus Santos, Vato Loco with the holiest name on record, pilfering through alleys with nothing on our minds but trouble, he sent me, Joaquin, mira. Look at that clump of sunflowers in the middle of all this filth, their petals outstretched like the arms of Nahuatl pole dancers constantly reaching out to their sun god. He said this to me. He was the first poet I'd ever known. That night, I read Mending Wall by Frost. After I read the last line, he looked at the early evening sky above us, the Virgin's horn moon, and he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, sometimes I feel like putting my fist through every wall in the world. And that's how I feel today. I want to put my fist through every wall in the world, every line in the dirt, every border, every boundary, because I'm tired of locking people out. And I'm tired of locking myself in. Report on news station says 19 die in semi-trailer. 19 illegals died of asphyxiation and dehydration and everything in the news stories there, the who, the what, the where, the when, but the one thing that's missing is the why. That's all I really want to know. Why did this atrocity have to happen? Because of a border that wasn't even there 1,000 years ago? When I look at pictures of survivors in my mind's eye, I can see the dead. And they are all olive skin, high cheekbones, dark, wild hair. They are my mother. They are my daughters. They are me, and I am them. I am in that trailer with them, clawing through insulation and tin with fingernails for air holes. I'm holding the vehicle in my arms, he dies, whispering the act of contrition over and over and over again. Oh my God, I'm sorry for this, because it displeases me. I am that woman, holding her lifeless child. I am that woman screaming, mi niño, mi niño, mi niño, and I am that boy in her arms. That terrible child of nowhere. I am all those people who died. I am those 6 unidentified males. I am Jose Felicito, age 92. I am Jose M. Tejada, age 34. I am Serafin Rivera Gomez, age 31. I am Roberto Rivera Gomez, age 30. I am Felicito Figueroa, age unknown. I am Oscar Gonzalez, age unknown. I am Ricardo Gonzalez Mata, age 24. I am Edgar Gabriel Hernandez Zuniga, age 17. I am Jose Antonio Villaseñor Leon, age 30, and I am Marco Antonio Villaseñor Acuna, age 5. And I died in a dark trailer in the middle of a Texas summer amidst screams and wails, begging God for water, begging God for air, begging God for just the smallest chance at freedom. And all I want to know is, why? Thank you. Years ago, I competed in this big competition called the Individual World Poetry Slam Championship that happens once a year in a different city in North America, where 80 poets from all over the planet descend on this one city in North America, and we battle each other over a 4-day competition. And at the end of that 4 days, after this grueling competition, I was lucky enough to be crowned the winner. Because of that, the following year, about a year back, I was invited to represent you all, the United States of America, at a competition in Paris, France, called the European World Cup Poetry Slam. So I went to Paris last summer, and I represented you all, and I competed against 16 poets from 16 different nations, and I was lucky enough to win that too. Not the big cup, we have the small cup for poetry. It's on my piano, my wife's piano in my library. I won it for you, so whenever you come to Texas, just knock on my door and I'll let you look at it. It's yours. If you let me know, if you call me beforehand, I will make guacamole and we will eat guacamole. So I really wanted to represent you guys well when I was in Paris. I spent a lot of time in my living room rehearsing, writing poems over and over again. And I remember one night I was writing poems to my beautiful Puerto Rican wife who hates poetry. I looked up for a magazine just long enough to say to me, you know, your shit is so serious. Why don't you write me a love poem? Why don't you write me a love poem? I was a high school English teacher at that time for 9th grade and 11th grade students, so I answered her question, why don't you write me a love poem? I answered it in the voice of the 9th grade student. I answered it this way. I don't know! If you know anything about Puerto Rican women, you know she did not accept that shit. So I had to write her a love poem. For Latinos now, we are passionate people, so I gotta do one love poem tonight. This is for my beautiful Puerto Rican wife who's watching my 2 girls so I can be here with you guys. By the way, if you wanna holla after the show, I'll holla back. But don't bother asking me, was any of that true, that love? Unfortunately, tragically, all of what I'm about to say, every word is true, so here it goes. This is called Sliding Doors, Frogs, and How We Love Each Other. A true story. It rained once. In the little town we lived in for 12 days straight, off and on, but mostly at night. I think we love each other this way, boo. Off and on, but mostly at night. On the 12th night of rain, the woman that I love sent me to the Eggers drugstore to buy 2 C batteries and 2 D batteries for the emergency flashlight and the backup emergency flashlight. As I pulled the store out of my car, that wind and rain, ding, the automatic doors had opened, welcoming me into the same image, so I pondered automatic doors for a moment. Are they a reflection of our genius or our stupidity? I quickly find the battery on aisle 5, but after I had it in my hands, I realized, shit, power outages, like some kinds of love, are only temporary. And when the woman that I love and I really need is Dr. Pepper and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. So I put down the batteries and head to aisle 2. For the sake of candy and hope. For the sake of soda and necessity. For the sake of all sweet tasting things and love. Well, as I'm about to purchase these items, the power goes out in the Eggers drugstore. Joe, the 300-pound clerk, reaches for his emergency flashlight, turns it on, and glows like a tiny beacon of hope in the storm. I think we love each other this way, boo. Like tiny beacons of hope in the storm. He says to me, if you want to leave the car, take soda and candy, that's fine. What the Keanu. I tell him, all I have is a debit card. He apologizes for the inconvenience, and I turn to leave, realizing quickly that I cannot budge the doors. Even Joe with his 300 pounds of luggage got much. So we are forced to wait it out for an hour. My mind begins to wander. What if the storm never lets up? I think we love each other this way, Blue, like storms that never let up. What if the storms at Total Barrage forces me to spend the remainder of my days in the Atkins drugstore with Joe, the 300-pound clerk? What a wonderful place to be stranded. All the Dr. Pepper Reese's peanut butter cups I gotta read out too. All the hand sanitizer check we're gonna use out 3. But I am not the kind of man who can live without love. I think to myself as I stare into the deep blue eyes of Joe, the 300-pound clerk. Damn. Because unfortunately, I am not gay. However, I read once of an unusual species of frog. If 2 male members of the species live in isolation long enough, one of them will spontaneously change sex into female. I wonder which one of us will spontaneously. In my mind's eye, I begin to put, how should I say this? Delicately cupped breasts, long flowing hair, and dark red lipstick on Joe, 300-pound clerk. It's a sick, twisted version of Mr. Potato. Should I say Mrs. Potato Head? And I realize quickly that I hope it's me that changes into a woman. Yes, the thought of Joe being with me is unpleasant, but not as unpleasant as the thought of me being with, oh my God! My menstrual cramps. How glad will my menstrual cramps be? Thank God for aisle 12. All the Tylenol, even Milo, Pearl, at this exact moment, the power comes back up in the Atkins drugstore, and I turn to leave, realizing quickly that I can never look at Joe, the 300-pound clerk, the same way. Again. Moral. The only thing that makes sense in this crazy world that we live in is love. And automatic doors are stupid. People ask me all the time, Joaquin, where do you get your ideas for poems? And I tell them, life! It's out there beyond the exit sign. You gotta strap your Yankees on and turn off the PlayStation 5 and go get out in it. Like the other day when I was at the mall. Oh, hell yeah. The mall. You ever been there? The mall? Who knew a poem would be waiting for me in the mall? Because you see, I was tying my youngest daughter's shoe. I was speaking to her in Spanish, as I sometimes do. And a man with his family was walking behind me, and he made a comment about how disgusted he was that I was speaking Spanish in his country. His, not of him. So I went home, got in front of the mat, which is what I did back in the day. It would have been on. Now I just write poems. So I was preparing about how much I hate this man. But my beautiful Puerto Rican wife who hates poetry, she put this picture above my desk where I write. It's a picture of my grandfather. And I know that I can't write a poem about hate because I would shame him. So instead, I decided to write a poem about how this man and I are actually connected to one another, and how maybe someday we could come to respect one another, maybe even, God willing, one day come to love one another. So this poem is dedicated to the man that I insulted at the mall. This is called Speaking in Tongues. Siéntate y pórtate bien, y a veces papi te va así. Sit down and behave, my little one, while Daddy ties your shoe. You see, these words were meant for my daughter and not for you. So as you roll your eyes and speak in a voice loud enough for her to hear, if they can't speak our language, they don't belong here. Know this. Your contempt for the language my grandfather prayed in is the least of my worries. It's the least of my fears. What you should have contempt for is how simple you are. Simple. Which comes from the Spanish simple. derived from the Latin simplus, meaning stupid. Because you see, people living in adobe houses should not throw stones, because adobe is a word my people have been using a long time for home. Even the most American words like the Alamo, barbecue, burrito, they all come from my people. We've been fooled to realize that just because you take something doesn't mean you plagiarize. Oh, by the way, shplayado, that's the Spanish word from which plagiarize derives. You see, we give them willingly. So when you attack my language, you attack your own. And that makes you a cannibal. From the Spanish carilla. Derived from Latin cannibal, so maybe you can grasp this. If you ever had a different tongue so enveloped that only could tell where hers ends and yours begins, to see, this is the way tongues were meant to be. This is the way we were meant to be. Unido. Which is Spanish for united, which comes from the Latin meaning that meaning separate, but if you still have the nerve to demand that I speak with your tongue, don't you see? I already do. Your tongue is my grandfather eating un burrito con huevos y chorizo. Your tongue is he and she and we. Your tongue is everyone. Your tongue is a blending of all accents, all colors, all things. And if you listen closely to the hip-hop lyrics being sung by your son, you'll realize that your tongue is new variations on old themes like gospel, becoming blues, becoming rock, becoming rap. Your tongue is as black as Eminem and Elvis Presley's lyrics. Look, I saw a black woman carry a white child away from Katrina with my very own eyes. You can feel it in the spirits that paid their lives. Lincoln and Douglas, Kennedy and King, they had everything in common. They all shared the same dream. But all this, you still push me away. You still think I'm different from you. Just because I say zapato sometimes instead of shoe. And though the man who thinks pendejo is the word in Spanish for you, the poet in me knows that this is not true, as much as we hate to admit it. You are me, and I am you. So I guess hermanos is the word for us in Spanish. And like all brothers, we sometimes don't get along. Sometimes we get what's right and confused what's wrong, but we should be so simple that we choose not to see that you and I, that we are impenetrable. Which comes from the Spanish penetrable, derived from Latin penetrabalis, which means two, standing as one. Look, I have a brown daughter. You have a white son. Don't let language be a barrier between them. Let them dance a salsa. Oh, my name together to the music of Justin Bieber. Let them eat arroz con pollo with a side of mac and cheese. Please. Let them be letting all accents, all colors, all things. Let them be new variations on old things. Let them be better than you and me. Maybe it's time we embrace our differences like they were our children and just let them be. In Colorado to middle school at-risk students who come from migrant families. And I was telling these young 7th and 8th graders that, you can write a poem about anything. Anything is worthy of being in a poem. Anything. And this one kid raised his hand and was like, what about going to the bathroom? And I said, someday I will write a poem about going to the bathroom. And here it is. See, I was driving through Arkansas, touring universities there, and I really had to go. I had to go, you know, for two. So there was this rest stop, and anyway, here goes, this is a poem. To prove to Jose that, and see, if he was here, he would know, even about bathrooms. This is called Hope 5 Miles. The last sign I remember reading before I pulled into the rest stop read, Hope 5 miles. I noticed a large black man enter the restroom just before me. A skinny white teenager entered just after me. There were just 3 stalls. And there we all sat. Like the worst Benetton Colors of the World clothing advertisements ever created. I normally don't like stall talk, but I I couldn't resist. I said, you know, King dreamed that someday little black boys and little white boys and little brown boys would all stand side by side holding hands. Well, at least we're all shitting side by side. That's a pretty good start. They laughed. I laughed. We all laughed like wild-eyed boys who measure themselves by elbows and torn jeans and coarse skirts. But never by color. Maybe hope was closer than I thought. This one's dedicated to my grandmother who curses. So if you don't know what means, just turn to someone. Now, this is the persona poem. I have to become my 12-year-old self, so give me a minute to get into my 12-year-old self's character. Here we go. Ready? My grandmother's name is Juanita. My grandmother is miraculous. You don't know this, but in my culture, easily anyone named Juan or Juanita can perform miracles. It has everything to do with the small brown peasant named Juan Diego, who witnessed a miracle. He saw flowers grow on a rocky hill where nothing grew before. He gathered these flowers in a mat, which then transformed into an invisible image. Then he spoke to the Mother of God. Ever since this small brown peasant did this, his name has become something sacred. His name has become something not to be taken lightly. My grandmother Juanita is sacred. My grandmother Juanita is someone not to be taken lightly. I saw with my own eyes my grandmother perform one such miracle. Toda la familia was gathered at my grandmother's house for a Christmas feast. The adults were seated at the adult table. The children were seated at the children's table. The in-betweens were seated at the in-between table. It was from one such in-between table that I witnessed the miracle. After the Dallas Cowboys lost to the hated Washington Redskins, my family was seated, hungry, and angry. When my grandmother delivered the most tragic news that can be delivered at a gathering of 40 hungry Mexicans. Cállate, pendejos! Cállate, pendejos! Listen, I have some bad news. I placed my faith in Tío Jose. He was to watch the pot cooking tamales. That pot he was to watch was left on high heat too long. Do not hold this against Tío Jose. He cannot help the fact that he is a pendejo. He is an asshole. Todos los tamales del grupo. Curses filled the air. Fists were clenched. Knives were drawn. My grandmother's living room, dining room, and breakfast were going to be the site of the bloodiest battle in the history of tamale warfare. Believe me, if you've never been in a room with 40 hungry Mexicans and no tamales, then you've never felt the utter total fear of impending doom. Then, my grandmother's voice rose above the tumult and crashed down on us like waves. Cállate, pendejos, listen! There are 40 hungry Mexicans here. Y no tamales, pero I can feed you all. Then, she took the phone in her hand, untangled it from the tangled cord that enveloped it, that protected it, that held it together the way she enveloped us, protected us, held us together. Then, with this phone cradled gently in her hand, she called Domino's Pizza. Blessed are those small miracles that just might save the world. I want to thank you all so so very much for listening to me tonight. And I want to thank you so much for having me be part of such a wonderful opening ceremony. It's going to be an extraordinary month. Did you see who's coming? She's Louise. One of the girl playing saxophone is coming too. Do we have any wands in the room? Is there a wand or one each other? The host wand, yeah. See? That's cool. So I was a high school English teacher. This is my last poem for the night. And by the way, I have books and CDs with me. I brought books and CDs with me. And one of the ways that I love to celebrate National Hispanic Heritage Month is to buy a book or a CD from a struggling Chicano poet. You know? So, you know, just saying. And I will give you the Oprah Book of the Month Club guarantee for my books and CDs. Here it is. Right? Here it is. 100% of the sales for my books and CDs tonight are going to go toward feeding hungry children. Mine. I got these two little girls, right? And if you ever saw them like a Pancho's Mexican buffet, you'd be like, oh my God. Thank you so much for listening. This last poem is inspired by a student who walked into my classroom who is now working on his master's in Rice University. And since I'm around students and undergrad and grad students, it's fitting to close with this one. Also because, like our host, he's a one. So I wrote this poem for him, and I couldn't think of anything better to call it, so it's just called Poem for John. So thank you so much for having me today. This is the last one. Thank you. So the assignment I gave my high school English students was to write a series of 4 short haiku poems that distinctly say something about themselves, and then recite them to the class. These are the 4 poems that John recited that day. Speaking in a quiet, communicative way always came easy to me. Accidents is equal to invention. When there's hope, I still practice accidents. I restore antique radios. I like the way static feels in my palms. You cannot deny the lucid fact that silence must succumb to voice. And I have to let you know now, John. Although you never uttered one word in class, you spoke volumes to me. And you taught me a lesson in humility. Because I realized that day my blind and deaf arrogance, and I asked you to master my language by attempting to learn one word of yours. So starting today, I'll begin by learning the signs where I feel the most beautiful spoken words in existence. Words like moon, eclipse, grandfather, sunflower. And I realize now, John, for whatever to write you a poem, it would probably sound something like this to you. Mother was the moon, and father was the sun. The moon and sun that existed in a constant state of eclipse. So I learned to grow despite the darkness. And I learned at an early age the power of spoken word, my mother's silence, and my father's absence formed cave walls, and my grandfather's words reverberated although like children dancing in a field of purple simply for the sake of purple. That is true. Metaphorically speaking, I am sunflower growing wildly in the alley adjacent to nothing, and though my petals extend upwards toward darkness, my roots extend deeply toward the warmth of all the voices that nourished me, or didn't nourish me. So thank you, mute mother. Thank you, absent father. Thank you, beautiful,
all-encompassing grandfather, and thank you, John, my silent, poetic student. For your